There are a lot of videos about Henry Ford. Usually they go something like this: visionary, genius, industrial pioneer, changed the world, end of story. Which is fine. But it is also a little suspicious when someone looks that perfect in a documentary. Because the Real Henry Ford was not just the man who built Ford Motor Company and made the Model T affordable for millions of people. He was also the guy who got pushed out of his own early companies. The guy who refused to update his best-selling car for years because he believed he was right. And the guy who doubled workers' salaries, while checking how they lived at home. So this is not going to be a great man of history lecture. It is more like a closer look at what happens when talent, ego, obsession and timing collide in one very stubborn person. You can decide for yourself whether that makes him a hero, or just a very complicated businessman who happened to change the world. Henry Ford was born in 1863 on a farm in Michigan. He was about 5'8" and probably heavier than the average farm boy, which made him look even more awkward around livestock. His father expected him to become a model farmer, working sunrise to sunset, but Henry had very different plans. He did not hate work, exactly. He hated repetitive, muddy, smelly work. While his friends learned how to herd cattle or plow fields, Henry was taking apart pocket watches just to see how the tiny gears moved. By the age of 15, neighbors were already bringing him broken watches because he had developed a reputation for being able to fix what others had given up on. And he did it not for money, not for recognition, but because he genuinely wanted to understand the mechanics. Now, here is where it gets interesting. Ford was not fascinated by speed or luxury. He was fascinated by efficiency. By how things worked together. By how to make a machine simpler without losing function. That curiosity would become his obsession for the rest of his life. At 16, he left the farm for Detroit to become a machinist apprentice. It was not a glamorous move. Detroit was industrial, noisy, and unpredictable. But for Henry, it was heaven. It was full of machines, and he finally had freedom from chores he had never liked and a father who could not understand his fascination with gears and engines. Their disagreements were quiet but persistent. Henry was patient with machines, less so with instructions from his father. A few years later, he joined the Edison Illuminating Company as an engineer. By 28, he became chief engineer. He earned a stable salary and respect, and most people would have stayed comfortably there. Ford did not. He began building a gasoline-powered vehicle in his spare time, even though nobody asked him to, and the market did not exist yet. In 1896, he completed his first vehicle, the quadricycle. It had 4 bicycle wheels, a tiny 2-cylinder engine, no reverse gear, and was probably not something anyone would want to meet on a dark country road. To get it out of his workshop, he had to widen the door. That little detail alone says everything you need to know. Henry Ford did not wait for permission. He did not ask. He built first and dealt with the consequences later. The quadricycle worked. It was noisy, unstable, and primitive. But it moved. And for Ford, that was proof enough that the future would not smell like a stable, and he would make sure it didn't. After building the quadricycle, Henry Ford decided it was time to take things seriously. In 1899, he co-founded the Detroit Automobile Company. The plan was simple: build cars, sell cars, make money. Reality, as usual, had other ideas. The company produced expensive, unreliable vehicles that nobody really wanted to buy. Ford, obsessed with engineering perfection, kept tinkering with designs, while investors were tapping their watches and muttering about profits. Within 2 years, the company dissolved. Not exactly the heroic rise to fame most documentaries imply. Undeterred, Ford tried again. In 1901, he launched the Henry Ford Company. This time, he wanted to focus on faster, sportier vehicles, experimenting with performance engines and innovations. Investors, however, wanted something more practical, a car people could actually buy. Conflict ensued. Tempers flared. Ford clashed with William Murphy and the board over the direction of the company. The disagreement ended with Ford leaving, voluntarily, technically, but with a fair bit of bitterness. His former company was soon reorganized as the Cadillac Automobile Company, which ironically went on to become a major success. Think about it, he builds two companies, both fail or are taken out of his hands, and yet somehow he is remembered as the guy who made cars affordable for everyone. History has a sense of humor. By 1903, he tried one last time, founding Ford Motor Company. This time, he had learned a few lessons, not all of them, certainly, but enough to finally put his vision into practice. By 1908, Henry Ford was ready to prove that his third attempt at building a company was not going to end like the first two. That year, Ford Motor Company introduced the Model T. Now here is the important part. The Model T was not the most beautiful car of its time. It was not the fastest. It was not luxurious. What it was, however, was durable, simple, and relatively affordable. And that combination turned out to be explosive. At launch, the Model T cost around $850. Within a few years, thanks to improvements in production, the price kept dropping. Eventually, it would fall below $300. For the first time in history, an average American worker could realistically think about owning a car. Ford did not just build a vehicle. He built a product for the middle class before the middle class even fully existed in modern form. Then came 1913, and with it, the moving assembly line. Now, assembly lines existed before Ford, but he refined and implemented the moving production line for automobile manufacturing at scale. Before this system, assembling a single car could take over 12 hours. After the moving assembly line was introduced at the Highland Park plant, production time dropped to roughly 90 minutes. 90 minutes. That is not optimization. That is industrial aggression. The factory floor turned into a synchronized mechanical ballet. Each worker performed a specific, repetitive task while the chassis moved past them. Efficiency skyrocketed. Costs dropped. Output exploded. And here is the part that made headlines. In 1914, Ford announced that he would pay workers $5 a day. At a time when the average wage in manufacturing was much lower, this was shocking. Some called him crazy. Some called him generous. What it really was strategic. If your workers can afford the product they build, you create customers. It was brilliant. It was calculated. And it worked. But success has a funny side effect. It tends to confirm your belief that you are always right. By the 1920s, the Model T had dominated the market for over a decade. More than 15 million units would eventually be produced. Ford became one of the richest and most powerful industrialists in the world. And that is exactly when his greatest strength, his certainty, began slowly turning into a liability. Because while competitors like General Motors were offering new models, colors, and annual updates, Ford kept insisting that the Model T was perfect just the way it was. He famously said that customers could have the car in any color they wanted, as long as it was black. That line sounds confident. It also sounds like the beginning of trouble. By the mid-1920s, Henry Ford had already changed the world once. The problem was that the world kept changing. The Model T had been in production since 1908, and for a long time it dominated everything. It was reliable, affordable, easy to repair, and built in numbers no one had ever seen before. But while Ford believed consistency was strength, the market slowly started asking for something else. General Motors, under Alfred Sloan, introduced variety. Different models. Different price levels. Regular styling updates, even financing options, which allowed people to buy cars without paying the full amount upfront. Ford's answer was simple: if the Model T works, why change it? By 1927, after nearly 2 decades, the truth became impossible to ignore. The Model T was discontinued. Factories had to shut down temporarily to retool for the new Model A. That pause was expensive, and during that transition General Motors overtook Ford in market share. The man who perfected efficiency had underestimated consumer psychology. At the same time, inside the company, pressure was building from another direction. Ford had introduced the famous $5 day years earlier, but that generosity came with supervision. The sociological department monitored workers' private lives, visiting homes and checking whether employees lived according to what Ford considered proper standards. And when it came to labor unions, Ford was openly hostile. Through the 1930s, tensions escalated. The company's service department acted as internal security and was known for aggressively confronting union organizers. In 1937, the conflict exploded publicly during what became known as the Battle of the Overpass. Union representatives distributing leaflets outside a Ford plant were beaten by company security. Photographs of the incident spread nationwide and damaged Ford's public image. By 1941, the pressure, economic, political, and social, had grown too strong. Ford Motor Company signed a contract with the United Auto Workers. It was not a philosophical transformation. It was reality catching up with stubbornness. Ford had built his empire on certainty, but certainty, when stretched too far, begins to resist adaptation. And history does not slow down for anyone, not even the man who taught it how to move faster. By the early 1940s, Henry Ford was no longer the restless young engineer experimenting with engines in a small workshop. He was an aging industrial titan, watching the industry he helped create grow more complex than he probably ever imagined. During World War II, Ford Motor Company became a crucial part of the American war effort. At the massive Willow Run plant, B-24 bombers were produced at a rate that would have sounded impossible only a few years earlier. At peak output, roughly 1 aircraft per hour. It was industrial production at a scale that perfectly reflected Ford's lifelong obsession with efficiency. But history was already moving beyond pure efficiency. The automobile was no longer just transportation. It was becoming identity, design, emotion, marketing, brand positioning, things Ford never cared about as much as steel, gears, and output numbers. His health declined in the 1940s, and leadership eventually passed to his grandson, Henry Ford II, in 1945. 2 years later, in 1947, Henry Ford died at the age of 83, and when we look at the automotive world today, global platforms, flexible manufacturing, constant redesigns, software updates, electric transitions, it is impossible not to see his fingerprints somewhere in the DNA of it all. Mass production, process discipline, cost efficiency, the idea that a car should not be a luxury toy, but a product for millions. Personally, I consider Henry Ford an outstanding figure in automotive history. Not because he was flawless, but because he had the kind of conviction that most people only talk about and rarely sustain. He stood by his ideas with relentless confidence, and that belief is exactly what pushed him through failures, criticism, and competition. Without that stubborn core, there probably would not have been a Model T revolution. At the same time, that very same stubbornness almost damaged everything he built. His refusal to adapt quickly to market changes, his resistance to unions, and his one-directional thinking during certain periods nearly weakened the company's position in the industry he helped create. In other words, the quality that made him successful was also the quality that made him vulnerable. An engine needs compression to create power. Too much pressure, and something breaks. Ford understood pressure better than anyone. Balancing it, that was the harder part.